Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have very big news coming out of Ukraine, Russia, and the Middle East. But by far our biggest piece of news of the day is coming out of Syria, as we have gotten word that the Syrian government is apparently heading for a brand new civil war of epic proportions according to US intelligence, and today we have seen the Syrians engage the Russian forces, which are still inside of Syrian territory, for some unknown reason, and it appears to be a big brewing situation in Syria that's about to go down. We've also gotten big news as well that Ukraine launched a major attack on Crimea the other night, resulting in several Russian airfields and targets being destroyed inside of that territory. And we've also gotten big word as well that the EU has slapped a brand new sanctions package on the Russian Shadow Fleet, causing severe economic hardship for the Russian Shadow Fleet. We've also gotten big word as well that NATO is preparing to provide even more Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine to protect their airspace. And finally, we have very big news about the Putin and US President phone call, which took place yesterday, and also Zalinsky's response to that call. But jumping to our first post of the day, this one goes to Disclose TV. And this is probably our biggest story of the day. Right now we are getting a warning from US intelligence, and specifically the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, that Syria is maybe weeks away from full-scale civil war of epic proportions, and we weren't really told many more details beyond that, but it appears to be a very ominous warning that Syria is about to fall into even more chaos than it's currently seeing right now as a result of more factions showing up and also more strife amongst the Syrian government, which is currently in charge. And to be perfectly honest, Syria has never really fully recovered from the new government that took charge, so I'm really not sure how much worse it can get, but believe me, Syria is known for getting much worse every single time, so I'm sure it will get worse, but right now we're very sparse on details. But this warning is once again very ominous that Syria is about to fall into another really bad situation of chaos in their country. But moving on to our next post here, this one goes to Status 6 military and conflict news. And also to add confusion to the entire brewing situation in Syria, this morning we're hearing that Russian forces and militants exchanged fire in the area of Russia's Crimea air base located in northwestern Syria, and casualties were reported among Russian personnel, and Russian sources claimed that the assailants were Uzbek. And sometimes it's really hard to tell when the Russians are lying. They're claiming these were Uzbek forces that came in and attacked the Russian personnel at this air base, but we're really not sure. Once again, we don't have any actual confirmation of that, but that is the Russian claim. But the big deal is here that we're seeing attacks on Russian forces inside of Syria, which we haven't seen in a minute. So this is a pretty big development. So let's take a look at our footage and see what we can spot with this attack on the airbase. So as you can see here, there appears to be some forces on the rooftops, and they are clearly firing toward the direction of the Russian base. So there are the assailants firing right there, as you can hear in the background. And once again, this angle is very blurry, and the cameraman's actually not pointing most of the time at these personnel, so it's hard to tell exactly where they are firing at the base, but we can see them right there on the rooftop really going for it. So that is one video right there, so let's take a look at our second video. So as we can see right here, this appears to be the actual airbase itself, the Russian airbase. There appears to be maybe barracks or a military building there, and obviously a perimeter fence right here in the very foreground. But you can see there are clearly impacts happening on that base and on the buildings, and it appears to be maybe small arms fire and perhaps even the larger munitions, maybe RPGs or things like that. But there are clearly impacts on this base, and once again, it has been a minute since we've seen this happen, and maybe a couple of months actually, if not longer. So this does indicate that something is brewing inside of Syria, and right now we're just not sure exactly what the details are of that, but maybe many factions rising up to challenge the current Jelani regime, which is in charge inside of Syria. So very interesting to see, and that pretty much is all the video shows for now. But jumping into our next post here, this one's going to go to Null Reports. And moving on from our Syria news and onto our Ukraine-Russia news, we do have some pretty big news coming out of Crimea, because we did see a major Ukrainian attack on occupied Crimea the other night, and we did hear that overnight in Dzhankoy in occupied Crimea, automatic gunfire, drone flybys, and explosions were reported, and according to local sources, there were hits on the military airfield, and the aftermath is being confirmed, and the airfield hosts the 39th Helicopter Regiment and various other Russian aviation units. So quite a large host of equipment here at this airfield. So let's take a look at our footage and see the attack on the airfield by Ukraine. So right there you could see there was clearly something on fire, but they're very secretive. They like to put a little privacy filter over it so you really can't see the ground, even though we know the location of this airfield has been geolocated already. The Russians feel like they want to keep it extra secret, so that's the Russian way. But fast forwarding here to the end, you can actually hear it. And there it is, another massive drone impact from the Ukrainian side, and once again a big hit on that airfield, and we don't know exactly what equipment was destroyed for certain just yet, but of course it was right there where the helicopter regiment was stationed, so naturally I assume the Ukrainians probably hit a couple of helicopters. So we're waiting to hear the confirmation of that, but very interesting to see right there on camera, even with a big privacy filter right over it. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to the Kyiv Post. And moving away from our news about the attack on Crimea, we have gotten some big news on the diplomatic front from the EU, and right now we are hearing that after Monday's Trump-Putin phone call, the EU approved its 17 sanctions package against Russia, targeting nearly 200 Shadow Fleet ships, but Russia's Shadow Fleet is estimated at 817 vessels in total. So the EU is doing a piecemeal approach to this entire problem. They're taking out a chunk of Shadow Fleets at a time when it comes to sanctions. I don't know really why that is. Maybe they don't know all the identity of the vessels to do it all at once, or maybe they're doing it in a escalatory way so that way they have some leverage left. Whatever the case is, they are putting even more sanctions on these Shadow Fleet ships, and that is of course a very good sign to cripple Russia's economy to the best way the EU can do. So very interesting to see from the Kyiv Post. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to Military News Ukraine. And we've also gotten some very positive news from the US side about Patriot batteries going to Ukraine in the future, because we are hearing that the US is working with NATO partners to provide Ukraine with additional Patriot batteries, according to the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So once again, the Patriot is a very good defense system which Ukraine relies on to defend their skies from Russian attacks, and these systems are really good for populated areas like around Kyiv. So they really rely on these heavily to make sure their airspace is defended, and it sounds like we're going to send more batteries, and we've already sent more missiles for the system, so that's a very good sign once again that we're still supporting Ukraine when it comes to defensive measures. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to the Clash Report. Also, we've got some very interesting news out of Romania today as well, because we have heard that Romania's interim president, Bolohan, has signed laws allowing the downing of drones in Romanian airspace. So I'm not really sure why they had to pass a law to do that, because I thought that Romanian airspace was sovereign and that they could shoot down whatever they wanted to if it was an enemy target. So apparently in Romania it requires a law to do that, but whatever the case is, apparently now they're committed to shooting down Russian drones that enter their airspace. And of course there's been a lot of drones that have entered their airspace over the past couple of years, and so far they've really not shot any of them down. They've just ended up crashing on Romanian territory, and then later we hear about it. So maybe they'll take proactive action now and shoot them down before they actually hit a target inside of their country, but that is a good shift if that is the case. But jumping into our next post here, this one also goes to Null Reports. And we've also got an update out of Russia, because of course Russia loves to invest in peace, and today we've heard that they're investing in peace once again, because Russia is now significantly investing in a strategic bomber fleet to match its increased missile production capacity, a action of course that is of a peaceful country. But despite sanctions, the Kremlin is also funding a major overhaul of aging bombers like the Tu-95Ms, while also modernizing the Tu-160 and Tu-22M aircraft and developing the next generation PAC-DA stealth bombers. So of course I'm being sarcastic here. This is not the actions of a peaceful nation, and it appears to be that they're trying to get a weapons advantage over Ukraine so that way they can bomb them into non-existence. So once again, not an action of peace, and it just shows that Russia is once again ramping up to continue attacking Ukraine or even move beyond Ukraine at some point in the near future. So very disturbing to hear coming out of Russia. But jumping into our next post here, this one also goes to Null Reports. And you all might have heard yesterday that there was a very historic phone call between the US President and Vladimir Putin on Monday. That was yesterday, of course. And we did hear a statement from the Kremlin Gremlin, also known as Dmitry Peskov, who's the spokesperson for Putin. And we did hear a statement from him. They said Putin's conversation with the US President is only by phone so far. No in-person meeting is prepared. And on Ukraine, there is painstaking and lengthy work that lies ahead. So the only painstaking work here is trying to propagandize the West. I think that's what he's referring to. But I would say that once again, this indicates that Russia has no plans on making a short-term peace. There's no plans for a ceasefire. And right now, Russia believes it's in the driver's seat because, of course, they are thinking they are preparing for this major summer offensive that's coming up and that they're going to make significant progress. So pretty much status quo for the Russians if I summarize it in pretty much one sentence. But anyways, jumping into our next post here, this one also goes to War Translated, and we also got a statement from Zalinsky responding to what happened with that phone call between the two leaders. And Zalinsky said that if Russia sets conditions that we must withdraw our troops from our own land, then it does not want peace and does not want the war to end because it knows that will not happen. And the US president believes that Russia is ready for negotiations and compromises, and we'll see. And I think Zelensky is being very diplomatic here by saying that we'll see, because Zelensky already knows Russia is not going to end the war. Zelensky's goal at this point is to basically convince the US leadership that Russia is truly not trying to end it. So Zelensky is facing a bit of an uphill battle with that because there appears to be be a lack of understanding on that front, but Zelensky is setting a red line that he is not withdrawing troops from his own land because, of course, that's Ukrainian territory, and why would they run away from their own land? So they're not doing that, and they're setting a red line. So that's a very good move by Zalinsky. But jumping into our next post, this one goes to Anton Gerashchenko. And we did get an after-action report from Vladimir Putin after he got off this phone call with the United States president, and he did speak to Russian journalists after the phone call and said he thought the conversation was meaningful, sincere, and very useful. And according to Putin, the U.S. president noted that Russia is for a peaceful resolution of the Ukrainian crisis, and he said that a ceasefire is possible if the relevant agreements are reached, and the renewal of contacts in Istanbul means the sides are on the right track. And now we'll have to see how the U.S. side is going to comment. And we already did get a U.S. comment, by the way, which we're about to jump into in just a moment. But once again, this is stalling tactics by Putin, and Putin believes that he's playing the U.S. officials for a fool. So right now, we'll have to wait and see what the U.S. response is actually going to be in the long term, because of course, I think it's pretty much predictable what the U.S. side said, and we're about to jump into that right now. So this post goes to OSINT Defender, and this is the U.S. response right here. And I'm going to save you from reading the entire Truth Social post from the United States president. I'm going to read you the summary of it, and basically, following the roughly 2-hour phone call between the U.S. president and Vladimir Putin, the U.S. president states in a post that he believes it went very, very well, claiming that Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire, and more importantly, an end to the war. And also, the U.S. president states that Russia wants to conduct large-scale trade with the United States when the war is over, and he agrees, adding that Russia's potential is unlimited. So, once again, this is a predictable response. This is pretty much the status quo response from U.S. officials when they get done talking with Vladimir Putin. And once again, the talks in Istanbul, which were the recent Russia-Ukraine peace talks, those were abandoned by Putin. He did not show up, and he sent these very low-level negotiators to try to start negotiations, which basically got nowhere. So there seems to be a quick amnesia about the Istanbul situation based on what we're hearing from U.S. officials, but once again, that is expected. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to OSINT Technical. And jumping away from our very heavy diplomatic news about the phone call there, moving away from that and onto some more news here, we have gotten some crazy footage out of Ukraine of apparently of an SOF logistics technician dragging a damaged Max Pro MRAP back to friendly lines by sheer willpower. And this was insane to see, because this is an MRAP. These things are like freaking mobile tanks. They are massive. Like, these are humongous heavy vehicles, and this guy was drifting it with literally a rim on the ground, drifting it around corners, and he had the absolute willpower to get the hell away from the Russians. So this was incredible to see. I've never seen a Max Pro driven like this, and I didn't even know it was really possible, because these things are top heavy, so it's real easy to flip over, and this thing has a busted out tire. So somehow it's rolling, and it's still getting around corners. So let's take a look and see what the Ukrainian ingenuity really looks like in the heat of battle. So would you look at that? Sadly, I had to mute the audio, but look at that. There is literally just a rim on the back tire back there. There is no tire left. It's just pure metal and rim on the ground. This thing is about to flip over. It's got a door wide open. Whoever's driving this thing is damn determined to get out of here. But you can see they're about to drift around a corner in just a second. They're going straight right now, so not too hard to keep it under control. But look at that thing. It is hauling butt down this road right here, and it's about to take this drift in just a second, which is insane. Let's get to that point right now. And here he goes. Look, here he is. Look, sideways. He's losing a little bit of control, but he's still got it, though. This guy's like a dang Tokyo Drift driver. Look at him. He's still going for it. And look, there's another angle of the other side just to show you. There's how massive the tires are, and there's literally no tire on the back. He is hauling butt. I would just estimate he's probably going about 40 to 60 miles an hour, it looks like. And he's, of course, trying to get away, so that's why he's going so fast. Also, there goes some more tire that just jumped off right there on the roadway. Here he is drifting it again, going along the straightaway. There he goes once more. Look at him, just hauling butt down this highway right here. And here he's about to pull off a sick drift, and here he goes right around this corner on a no tire, just a rim. Look at that. He is going for it. That was honestly insane. Like, I'm not just saying that for just comedy value. That was crazy. I've never seen a Max Pro driven like that ever, and that is crazy to see once again. So wild footage there, right there at the end. But with that, folks, that is actually our last post of the video. So once again, I hope you enjoyed today's video. We did have a good bit of news to cover today, but once again, we'll cover all the rest of the news tonight on our nightly war news stream at 10 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to join us for that. And also, before you leave the video, smack the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well if you already haven't for more daily war updates just like this one. And also, if you want to support the channel financially, you can do so on our Patreon page. And the link is in the description below for Patreon, where you can go over there, sign up for a monthly membership, and support the channel very bigly that way. And we do appreciate that very much. And a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. But with that, we'll see you all at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight on our nightly war news stream. And with that, bye-bye for now.